Thank you everybody for joining. And we're going to be dividing it into two. We've been speaking with a lot of companies, and we've been seeing over time that it's hard for CEOs and C-level management to bring it up to speed for board members, investors to understand basically what is federal R&D funding, what it's like writing grants and contracts with the federal government, and mostly how do you basically make the ROI of doing federal grants and working with us tangible. So we're going to be going through a lot of numbers. We're going to be going through the process. So if there's any questions, feel free, and more than welcome. You're more than welcome to either connect us. And this is something that we always say: you don't have to defend us when it means talking with the board or the CEOs or investors. We're more than happy to explain our services to anybody, but feel free to use this audio later or this deck to show it to board members. Or if you're board members and investors, feel free to show it to your companies. This is definitely something to help make federal funding more tangible and more concrete when it comes to valuing it as an investment and a business strategy. So what we're going to do is something that's very straightforward. We're going to go and understand federal R&D funding and how you should think about it. And then what we're going to do is how it's like to work with us and how do we approach the process compared to other ways you might have been thinking of doing other business adventures. So without kind of further ado, let's take the investor partners, and you take a look at it from a private and federal purpose. And for federal investors, federal R&D money is there to supplement your R&D. It's not there to be a pivot machine. It's not there to completely transform the company. It is there for the government to invest in innovation. This is either innovation that is good for them for personal reasons of what an agency might need, or to push strategic innovation forward. Because the government is an investor there, then they're trying to stimulate critical technology. So because they are the investor, they will not take equity. Usually, a lot of people ask us, is there a risk to equity? Is there a risk to IP? Do we get further intervention? There is nothing. It is 99.9% of solicitations out there do not try to take control of your IP. They're trying to develop the technology for either them to procure or for the US to develop. Now, that is a size of budget that you can't ignore anymore. For 2021, the federal R&D budget is going to be $142 billion. Now, if you're to speak with a VC that funds $140 billion in technology, you would have heard of it much more than you've heard of the federal government. You wouldn't ignore it as much. You wouldn't treat it as you treat federal R&D funding. Now, of that $142 billion, 3.2% of it is directly dedicated for small businesses and startups. And we're going to know exactly, we're going to talk about afterwards, do you know if you qualify or not? So within small businesses, they decided to make it tangible and kind of palatable for startups. You guys as startups, you don't have a 10-year strategy plan. This is basically decided to show and get companies to be more palatable for startups. So there's a phase one that's 50 to 250,000. It's there to proof of concept, to have a technical merit. Does the idea make sense? So can you find a partner, or does the general idea of what you're trying to develop make sense? After you're able to deliver on that first stage, then you move into kind of more interesting amounts. And that is anywhere from 750 to $1.6 million, all non-dilutive, to build a prototype. Now you either build a prototype that then gets evaluated, or you partner with an agency champion that you're developing the prototype together, because that person will be using that prototype. And then the third phase is commercialization assistance. So you move from the prototype, and there's funding that's outside SBIR, and then that is pushed to move from the prototype to an actual product. They're interested, and the federal government is interested in seeing how you're taking a concept and then turning it into something that then gets circulated back into the market. And this is still, those 3.2% are still $3.7 billion that gets awarded annually. They get awarded to thousands of companies. And if you haven't done that before, your competitors are right now getting funded with federal funding. So the question is not should you be doing it, is what are your competitors doing that they're getting these amounts? Now, you don't have to believe me. Take a look at what the Department of Energy is saying. This is something that we pulled out from their website. And they're saying, what is only an SBIR grant? And remind you, SBIRs, Small Business Innovation Research Program funds, are only 3% of the actual budget. So they're describing it on a phase one, you can get up to 200,000 from the Department of Energy. For the phase two, you can get a million to a million point six on the prototype, then additional funding of a million point one, then additional third to move into commercialization R&D, a million point one again, and then afterwards, phase three of actual commercializing, there is no limit. This is no longer, it is no longer, excuse me, it's not limited within the SBIR funds. It can go to pretty much whatever amount you need to get that commercializing. Now, let's take a look at actual research that they've been doing further on. Leveraging grants, SBIR wins, and this is a research that came from the Department of Energy. If you get a phase one grant, the chances of you getting a follow-on funding from the private sector doubles. So this is no longer, you can't value it only at the, this is like a company that leaves a very famous accelerator. Their chances of getting funded afterwards increases. Now, they've been seeing the same thing that's been happening with SBIR phase one grants. I want to remind you, phase one grants can be 50 to 250,000. So this is no longer value, which means to you, it's no longer just the dollar amount. It shows that you're vetted by a federal agency, and the chances for you to get follow-on funding if you're working on a Series A, B, or seed increase because you have that SBIR grant. So you have to factor that if you can get more funding that's coming from the private sector, it's no longer just to be valued on its own merit. Now take a look at a Milken Institute research that they've found that over an 8-year-long period, you've been able, every dollar you'll be getting from public investment from R&D, government agencies, you'll be able to leverage that up to $8, 8 times to the dollar on your additional R&D funding. So on an early stage, it's a good investment because it increases the chances you'll actually be getting additional series and funding from the private sector. And then over time, you can seriously leverage that because private sector responds to what you'll be able to get from the public sector. Now let's take a look at some funding agencies and investors. You can take a look at the Department of Transportation, NIST, the SBA, the National Science Foundation, Homeland Security, yes, the Department of Defense, the Department of Energy, Space Force. All these agencies are funding innovation. NOAA, all these agencies are funding groundbreaking technological solutions. These are not, grants to go and open a bakery. This is to develop groundbreaking technological ideas within the U.S. Let's take a look. Let's take a look at a recent case study. So one of our companies, let's call it Company X, it's a drone software company. And I'm bringing this example now because this is to make it tangible. We've been seeing this Company X, they got a phase 2 award. A phase 2, I remind you, is the prototype stage. They got $750,000 to build a prototype. Afterwards, they received strategic financing from a federal investor, and that was matched 1 by 1. So they got $3 million that came federal, non-dilutive, and another $3 million that came from the private sector. That was $6 million that happened in March when the market was crashing. So if you want to talk about resiliency and robustness of federal investments, this is something to factor in because you can hedge it no matter what happens in the private sector. And now they're working on a sole source contract with the US Air Force. Their return on investment from working with us and taking that R&D funding route with the federal government gave them a 24,000% return on investment on working with us. So these are amounts that we're going to be talking and comparing them to private sector, but essentially they were able to get a huge return on investment on working with us. Now let's take a look at types of federal funding and investments. Before I go kind of deeper there, anybody has any questions so far? feel free to either raise your hands or ask questions. If I can't answer now, I'll address them later. But these are definitely amounts that you cannot negate. You can't think of it as, oh, it's just 50,000. No, it's 50,000 now to possibly increase the chances of getting another round that then can turn out into 750,000 and more. Let's take a look at types of federal investments. You have either an agency that is looking for you to solve their challenges. If you are an AR company and you have a better way of training individuals, if you are an education platform, if you're a data analytics company and your innovative software can change the logistics department of an agency, if you're able to do better commodity pricing, if you're able to give better standards, if your hardware materials can make an actual impact and change what the agency is experiencing as a problem, then this is something that's an experience for you. Instead of doing 4-year-long kind of government contracts, R&D tracks lead to the same route of solving that challenge. You'll see that the agency would be looking to solution to a problem they have. There's a great story of an agency that the Air Force was looking to build a new helmet for their pilots. Now, it took them 7 years and $7 million to reach to a product. By the time they finished, the helmet was no longer relevant. It was outdated technologically. So they posted that as an R&D opportunity. We're looking for these type of prototypes. They learned what came from the market. They were able to get, I think, 3 different prototypes after a year and a half for a third of the price. They invested in those companies, and then they saw how these companies perform on their R&D, and then the best ones in a competitive bidding process were able to actually develop it, and they were able to develop that product, specifically that helmet, shorter, faster, and better. The other type of investments is strategic, where it's seed money for private industry. And you'll be seeing that the reason that they do it is both for kind of altruistic, where it improves the quality of lives, it circulates money in the economy, it advances technology, it creates jobs. The other part is bringing in tax dollars that get circulated in the economy. It builds a stronger business and it keeps US within the forefront of strategic technologies. And the third part that you'll be seeing with agencies such as the National Science Foundation, they want to see high risk, high reward. They don't necessarily want to improve by 3% the existing market. They want to see how this is a technology that is groundbreaking, that they needed, the federal agencies are needed to be able to push the envelope on what's available. Let's talk about on deciding if you or the company you're investing at or you're considering if you're eligible or not. For SBIR grants for small businesses, your R&D needs to happen in the US, and the primary investigator, the person who's managing the R&D project, needs to be a permanent resident of the US. So it can be a green card, it could be a US citizen, but these are the types. So if you have a green card, you're eligible. If you're a citizen, you're eligible. Other types of visas are very much case by case. The business needs to be less than 500 employees, and 51% of it or more needs to be owned by a permanent resident. So there is a priority for veteran, women, and minority owned. The cool part is if the business is VC backed, but the VC is still a minority shareholder within the company, you're still eligible. There are cases where a VC is a majority owner and you can still apply for small businesses, but this is a more complicated case that we solve with each company if that's a scenario. However, that's the rule of thumb to think if your company or the company you're investing at or the board is considering, should you go after or not? So is the R&D going to happen in the US? Are you less than 500 employees total? And is 51% owned by US residents? For broad agency announcements are the 97% part of the budget, and that's basically for all size companies. Boeing applied to it, Lockheed Martin applied for it. You can apply for it as well, but the R&D doesn't have to all be in the US. We have international companies that we work with, companies that don't fit within small businesses that apply for broad agency announcements. You allow for other businesses, basically foreign businesses, to apply there too. So don't rule yourself out from federal funding process if you're not eligible for SBIRs. The lion's share, basically 97% of the budget, is available in broad agency announcements. So don't rule yourself out. And if it's a VC-backed companies, then you can still apply. Let's take a look at some of our winners that we've been experiencing. And it's not just for you to see the companies that we work with, it's for you to see the variety of technologies. So you can see AI-powered facial recognition, drone-based meta management, live streaming, carbon nanotubes, and smart wearable fabrics. This is not just for one type of agency or one size fits all. If anything, we're seeing that more and more agencies are interested in exploring a variety. We've seen like the Small Business Authority saying that about 25% of their winners at a given year have applied for the first time, and their staff is less than 25 people. If you're a small size company, do not deter from the process. So definitely you have a shot in winning. We'll talk about what we think is a winning approach. Now let's move into basically from the R&D project into a B2G contract. And you're seeing here that NASA, the Defense Innovation Unit, the Department of Homeland Security, AFWorks, XTech Search are all programs that are moving from, not moving, but they're essentially taking the approach of let's fund the R&D. If you're able to deliver on every stage, afterwards, we'd be interested in seeing how we can incorporate this within our agency. So it's not just a strong move financially, because you can get follow-on funding, you can leverage what funding you get from the government with the private sector. It's not just developing your R&D and helping the company scale and grow and have an additional revenue source to help the company develop. It is also a business move that can help a company that is developing a truly groundbreaking product move from just a development stage into a commercialization stage where they have a client. Now, imagine that you're seeing a company that has the NASA logo or the Department of Energy or National Science Foundation. That immediately has a resonance within the private sector, because when people go on your website, when people hear that the government is a client for you, they're interested in working with you, because that means you work at scale, that means that you're resilient, that means that you're reliable. So there is resonance that happens within the private sector outside of funding. It's a good marketing move, it's a good sales move. It does take time. You're not going to be able to get a government contract within 30 days. Definitely not. But these are things that if you're factoring in a company's plan for the next 2 years, this is definitely something to work out. Take a look at solicitation cycles. So this is again something that we've been taking from the websites of the federal agencies themselves. And you'll see here from October till December, Department of Homeland Security, Department of Commerce, NOAA, Department of Defense, Department of Energy, Department of Transportation. There's no single month that there's not an open solicitation available for companies to apply for. And we'll discuss what that means when it comes to our approach on how do you maximize your chances of winning. But you'll see here that there is a busier season that's happening between November till April. And then you'll see that it gets kind of busier again from June to September. However, every single month, there is an agency that is funding an R&D project. National Science Foundation are pretty much open year-round. Department of Defense are open 3 times a year. Department of Energy twice. NASA, you'll see them that they're open twice a year. These are all things that to consider and how we're trying to factor. We're trying to align ourselves with the cycles that we're already aware. And this only includes the funding and research opportunities that they know of. Constantly, we're seeing throughout the year that an agency would pop out a research opportunity happening within the next month. So it's something that we always keep a lookout. And this, of course, does not include broad agency announcements, which are either surprise and then they get funded really quickly and then they close just for a single project, or they're open year round. This is just for small business innovation research program. Let's move into, and this was kind of the one-on-one on federal agencies. And this is something I always say in the webinars and kind of discussions that we have. You don't have to work with Eagle Point. You really don't. But you can't rule out $140 billion possible investment in a market. Some of it can reach within 60 days and can lead to follow-on funding of up to $6 million or more that has a huge impact on both your commercialization and your funding. So don't necessarily work with me, but don't rule yourself out of this project. Let's take a look at working with us. Eagle Point Funding, we're a division of the Freemind Group that's been doing this for the past 20 years, raised over $1.5 billion, been doing this pretty much since 2003, and what it's like to work with us. So our average ROI of our awarded companies is 16 times the cost of working with us. This is, of course, for companies that were awarded, and this is something that takes time, but we're seeing that for the companies that won at least one award, the ROI on working with us is 16 times to the initial investments. What we see as 5 winning keys to winning federal funding is: one, you need to find multiple funding opportunities. Doing one-offs is not our approach. Find multiple funding opportunities, agencies, project and use cases that do align with what you're trying to do. We're not saying find any relevant opportunities. If you're an AI company, doesn't mean you need to do every solicitation for AI, but it does mean find multiple chances of winning a project. When you're going for investors, when the company was raising seed capital, it didn't just go to one investor, it went to several. It's very possible you'll be able to get it on the first, but it's also possible that you'll only be getting an investment on the 8th investor or VC you speak with. This is the same approach with R&D funding. Know the system means understand what each agency is looking for. Each board member, CEO, client is looking for a different solution to what they're trying to do. It's the same with the agencies. We tell people that when you write the solicitation, write it differently and adapt to what each agency is out. So understand, it's not just a cookie cutter copy and paste. You need to be diligent about it. Build a clear case. What I always like to say is an agency needs to know why should they care about your tech? What does the market care about what you do? And thirdly, why should the agency care about what you do? So you have to hit that triad and build a clear case for you. It's not just that the technology is important, not just that the market is big, or this is a problem for the agency. Why does it matter to you and them? Tell the story of your tech in a concise and compelling manner, and engage in multi-submissions. So find multiple submissions, pick the best ones, and then go after them one after the other. The next slide I'm going to show you, and the reason I'm saying it is because this is a demonstration of our entire approach. You can take a look here. I've taken just a 1-month case study of types of agencies and amount of solicitations. What you can see here is just a huge amount, dozens and dozens of solicitations that we've sent out at one given month to different agencies. Now, what you're seeing here is that we're full on believers of the multi-submission approach. Don't just do one, do several submissions for a given agency and do multiple agencies at a time. Let's take a look at amount of submissions that you can expect on working with us during the trial period, the initial term of working with us. So we'll see here, you'll see here the amount of submissions that we'll do with a segment of our companies. On average, companies do about six grants with us. Over time, it is increasing and the average keeps going up on companies and amounts of solicitations that we go after, which again embodies the idea of doing multi-submissions. You're going for multiple clients, you're going for multiple investors, go for multiple R&D funding opportunities. Let's talk about timelines. Average time to first submission since a company decided to engage with us and sign a contract is 30 days. And that is the reason why we will be telling companies and clients, if you need us with the board, if you need to bring with CEOs, bring us, because if we have a week before the deadline, it is not going to be a great experience for you. We might not make it and build the solicitations. We might not do a better job. We want to review again and again. So it takes us on average 30 days to craft the first one. Over time, that takes less and less, but we strongly agree. And this is, we'll be talking deadlines and timelines later on, but definitely do not take your time if you're interested in doing federal funding with us. What do we need from your side in time investment? The first submission is going to take about 60-40. You guys know your tech way better than we do. We need time to get onboarding, learn your language, be very savvy in exactly what you do, so we can go and later on take the work from you. So the first submission we do together, it's going to take us about 30 days and 60-40 effort. 60 is most likely going to be on our side, but it depends on technologies, niche, etc. And then after the second submission and up, it's going to be about an 80-20 effort on our side. So 80% of the work is going to come from us, and over time, taking the workload from you, dramatically reducing the amount of time it takes you to write a solicitation, which brings to the fact that we will apply for more and more solicitations and increase the chances of winning. Let's take a look at some stats. Shortest time to award from kickoff. So 60 days to get a result. It's pretty straightforward. Let's give an example from the Air Force. If we do engage now, it's going to take us 30 days to write the solicitation. And then it takes an agency about a minimum of 30 days to give you an answer back saying, hey, congratulations, you got awarded. Then 4 months till you get money in the bank. This is not from the first solicitation. This is from the moment of working with us. These are times that we've been seeing. And sure, for some companies, it takes just a little longer, but this is, again, the shortest time to kick off. So if we engage in December, you should be expecting some sort of initial funding within April, March. How do you factor this in your 2021 plan is definitely something to factor in there, definitely if you're looking at a 2-year horizon. Let's take a look at 4 awarded companies. We're seeing that companies that have won, it takes them on average about 3 submissions before we see an award. Now, if you think about it, that right now there are about 5 agencies that are open, it's something to consider when you should expect that award. Now, obviously, this is an average. Some companies takes them longer to get awarded and others win on the first try. This is the average that we've been seeing. For the companies that have won, it takes them about 3 submissions till they should see some initial award and traction. If there's no further questions, let's talk about what's coming up ahead for Q4, the rest of the year, which is kind of 2 weeks, and the Q1. Department of Homeland Security are open. The Air Force, the Department of Defense, Department of Energy, NASA, and the National Science Foundation are all agencies that are opening within the near future. Let's take a look at it. NASA, we've passed our deadline. We cannot onboard companies anymore for the NASA solicitation, just because it's not enough time. It's not going to be professional work if we go in the NASA solicitation. The Department of Energy, if you're interested, we cannot work with you later than December 20th. It's going to be very hard. You're going on Christmas holiday, New Year's holiday, so it's going to be very difficult for us to work. That's why we want to work with companies by December 20th so we can make that deadline. Homeland Security, same. Department of Defense, January 12th, AFWERX program within the Air Force, January 15th, and the National Science Foundation, February 2nd. What to expect on working with us is you could expect an intro within 24 to 72 hours from signing the agreement with our professional department. We assign a specific grant consultant and a team leader to you. It goes with a kickoff call. Then you get introduced with your direct point of contact, and then we start going after grants together. Then you build a step-by-step strategic plan that you go to look at all the agencies, decide and understand which ones are relevant, which is worth your time, and then you build the horizon for them for at least the next 3 months. So there's no surprises. There's no, oh, there's a deadline coming in a week. Here's how we're going to build the writing plan and the solicitation plan within your existing work. So it's going to be weekly meetings, constant editing that's happening within a shared folder. So there's no surprise in it. It's a step-by-step process. So you're making sure you're going to make the deadline. Unlimited amount of grant submissions is a guarantee that we have from our side. We've never limited the amount of solicitations we went after with a client. Never. This is something that is repeated from the head of our professional department over and over again. The more grants we go after, the more help we'll need from your side. However, we've never limited it. As you've seen in the slides above, some of our clients have done 10, 12, 15 submissions within the initial terms. Others have done less. But the reason that we have both a flat fee and a success fee, it allows us to have both the team leader and the direct grant consultant that allows us to really craft as many submissions as we can. So if you're a believer within doing as many funding opportunities as possible within a year, definitely factor it in there. What we're seeing is 5 to 10 on average is what companies are able to deal with within our trial period. So that is pretty much on us. The last part I want to discuss is also what we do with connections. So I want you to take a look at this. This is a deep tech showcase event, and what we're doing is we're trying to bring in the community. We're trying to bring in the community of both investors, startups, and members of federal agency and also industry partners to connect between the companies that work with us, companies within the ecosystem, the agencies, and the investors, because we're seeing such a powerful combination that's happening. So if you're right now an investor or board member, definitely go to deeptechshowcase.com, go to this website and register. You'll be speaking to a member there and see if this is a fit. And the next event is happening on January 7th, and we'll be trying to make good cooperations within the ecosystem to help truly groundbreaking technology, forward-thinking innovators, and federal agencies to connect together to really do amazing things. So I strongly recommend either asking for the deck or go to deeptechshowcase.com. Just take a look at the conclusions on ROIs. What we're seeing is the time to money within this process is similar to raising a funding round. The ROI is similar to a funding round, it's just equity free. So if you're thinking of doing a Series A or a Series B over about 9 to 12 months horizon, that can be it could be identical. It's just coming from an equity free, equity free equity free investment. The time to engage is now. It's the same as hiring your coach. It's hard to start, but a year after, you'll be able to see such amazing results. You didn't know why you didn't start sooner. And knowledge and power. So if you're speaking, inform your companies and board members that you're speaking with. Let's make 2021 happen. Feel free to either contact me at Yoav at Eagle Point Funding or scan the QR code and book a call with us. More than happy to take your questions now. What is the probability of winning the leap? What is the probability of winning SBIR solicitation with and without using Eagle Point's assistance? What we've been seeing over time that the stats are about 8 to 15% success rate on a submission. That's what we've been seeing from the SBA. From stats that came from Iran, about 60% of the companies that engage with us win at least one award within the trial period, within the first 9 months of working with us. So these are the stats kind of compared. Let's take a look at, is there a limit of one SBIR at a time, or is this by agency? Jim, it's by agency. So you've received NIH. Basically, we're not doing a whole lot of NIH grants. What we do is pretty much anything that's outside the NIH. You'll have agencies like NASA that they're willing to accept up to 10 submissions, and they'll award 5. Other agencies are saying you can apply for only 1 at a time. So it's definitely a case by case. Do I have to have my company established for a POC? Yes, you need to. We've seen a program in the past that even if you're a student and you have a cool idea, then they're willing to fund it. But yes, pretty much you need to establish the company. Does the Department of Labor offer any grants? Ankit, I'm not 100% sure, but the SBIR funds is basically 3.2% of any agency that has above $100 million R&D budget has to be dedicated for small businesses. So I wouldn't be surprised if they do. I'm not 100% sure. Okay, 1 second. Let me see. How do we contact you to discuss possibility? Hassan, you can email me at yoav@eaglepointfunding.com or scan the QR code and then book a call. We'll be doing some vetting process on our side. So if you have links to websites or you share information so we can understand if it's worth cooperating together, definitely share them in advance. Yeah, so email me at yoav@eaglepointfunding.com or scan the QR code that's accompanying to the slides. How do you get paid for your service for a startup, and how much IP or equity do you keep? Fabio, we keep 0 equity and 0 IP. We don't touch your IP. We sign an NDA with every single client that we have, and we touch none of your IP. We have 0 interest. We do, however, have an upfront cost and a success fee that allows us to pay the salaries of the grant consultants and the team leaders, where we're looking to make the majority of our profit is with a success fee and helping our companies succeed over time. So we take 0 equity, 0 IP sharing, and we make sure that we treat our clients' privacy very, very seriously. If you're interested in understanding if this is fit for you, if the multi-submission strategy is something that you can handle, I definitely suggest YOAV@eaglepointfunding.com or scan. Okay, does the Department of Labor offer any grants? Yes, we've answered that. What is the cost of cooperation? Email us privately and we'll be able to answer it. Basically, it changes and we give significant discounts to companies who engage with us on longer term. So the price for 9 months is not the same, the trial period is not the same as engaging for us on 24 months or longer. Are you sharing these slides with us? Yes, we will if you're registered. Yes. Robert, the success fee is only on the grants we actually helped you get. So if we helped you write grants, then if your grants are awarded, that's the success fee you'll be taking. If you went on a government contract and you've done that without us and you've negotiated that basically by yourself with the agency, then we don't get a stake for it. It's not forever. So definitely, yeah, the success fee is not forever. Any more questions you folks might have? So are these fees? So the fees are there. I'm not sure understanding. I scheduled an introductory call for next week. It looks like I'm meeting Sasha. What's her role? Okay. So for the first meeting, book it with Sasha or with me. That's perfectly fine. Sasha is our outreach. Basically, she'll be able to have a lot of great answers. Worst case, we'll book a quick follow-up with me. Is there research to find all the specific solicitations from all the agencies? Dylan, you can definitely go to grants.gov, but different agencies use different portals. I know that the Department of Defense have their own, grants.gov have their own. There is some discrepancy that's happening between them. That's why we try to do on a case-by-case with each company we work with. So I suggest go and start with the grants.gov, Dylan, or go to the Department of Defense if you're interested in working with them. That would be a good place to start. They are doing a lot of effort on trying to improve their kind of user experience. I think that they can improve a little bit. They have room to improve. But if you have any further questions on that, definitely hit me up. That I think I covered most of the questions. If anybody else has any, I'd be more than happy to answer. Great, thank you. My pleasure, Dino. Again, we're having a lot of deadlines that are coming up. The Air Forces, the Air Forces opening, the Department of Energy, Homeland Security, and National Science Foundation are all opening up. Q1, as you've seen on the slide, is definitely a huge time to start and hit the ground running and do as many submissions as possible. So unless anybody wants to raise their hand and bring another question, I think that we finished. If you want to just raise a hand and ask a question, I'd be more than happy to answer. Fabio, my pleasure. And again, we'll be circulating the deck and the audio afterwards. So feel free to circulate that within your board of directors, within the investors, if you're discussing this process. If you're interested on bringing us and examining your specific case, if it's relevant or not, again, scan the QR code, book a call. We have end of the year kind of additional month additional month for anybody who signs before the end of the year. Do we need a cage code? Yes, you do. You'll need that to actually get awarded, but this is something that different agencies have different regulations. Thank you, Joe, as well. My pleasure. So if you're interested in engaging on federal funding, let me know in the email if you can't find the time, or talk to us fast. We have some end of the year sales that we can offer, like 1 additional month for anybody who signs before the end of the year. But again, feel free, circulate it around. I think there's a lot of knowledge. So thank you again very much, folks. I hope this was, I thought this gives a lot of value on how to make this tangible. And I hope I get a chance to speak and kind of meet you personally. So thank you very much.